A brilliant scientist, Isabel Ford, uncovers a shocking secret buried deep within the powerful Aurora Project, a revolutionary medical initiative turned into an elite profit machine. As she dives deeper, she discovers the truth about the project's origins and the tragic death of Grayson Montgomery's twin brother. Together, they fight to expose a web of corruption, while a forbidden connection sparks between them. Will they break free from the past and save the future? Where are you tuning in from? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more thrilling, life-changing stories. Isabel Ford had always been the kind of woman who took her work seriously. At 28, she had just completed her doctorate in molecular biology at MIT, earning her accolades for her groundbreaking research on cellular regeneration. It was a proud moment in her career, one that she had worked tirelessly for. But it was not without sacrifice. The drive to succeed had left little room for anything else, especially relationships. So when she received an invitation to join Montgomery Industries, one of the most influential biotechnology companies in the world, she didn't hesitate. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. What she didn't anticipate was the man she would have to work with. Her first day at Montgomery Industries was a blur of excitement and nervous energy. The building was a sleek monument to innovation, all glass walls and steel beams that gleamed under the sun. She had barely settled into her desk when she was summoned to the boardroom for her first meeting with the company's enigmatic CEO, Grayson Montgomery. The name was familiar. He was a billionaire, Boston's most eligible bachelor, and someone whose reputation for control and precision was whispered about in every professional circle. Isabel had read about him in journals, his cold business acumen, his relentless drive to succeed, and most of all, the tragic death of his twin brother, Nathaniel. It was said that Grayson had never fully recovered from it. As she walked into the boardroom, a rush of nerves surged through her, but she was determined to make an impression. The moment she stepped in, she was hit with the scent of expensive leather and polished wood, the faint hum of the building's air conditioning, and then, the disaster. The coffee she was holding slipped from her hand, splashing across the pristine white shirt of Grayson Montgomery's custom Armani suit. A sharp gasp echoed around the room. "I'm so sorry," Isabel stammered, her hands trembling as she reached for napkins. She had barely seen him come around the corner, her face flushed with embarrassment as the room fell silent, every eye on her, but Grayson remained still, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. He didn't say a word. Instead, he just stood there, looking at the mess that now marred his suit, like a predator deciding how to deal with a minor inconvenience. Isabel's heart pounded in her chest. The silence felt like it would last forever. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. "Your first day, I presume?" Isabel nodded, still fumbling with the napkins. "Yes, sir. I didn't see you coming around the corner." Grayson's eyes studied her for a moment longer than necessary. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, reading her, analyzing her every move. Then, in a surprising turn, he didn't lash out like she expected. Instead, he gave a curt nod and turned toward the rest of the room, dismissing the moment with a simple command. "Dr. Harrison," Grayson said, calling to an older man who had entered behind him. "Miss Ford will be joining the Aurora Project." The words hit Isabel like a punch to the gut. The Aurora Project was Montgomery Industries' most secretive and high-profile initiative, one that no one dared to touch unless they were exceptional. A glance around the room revealed shocked faces, murmurs of disbelief that Grayson had chosen her for such a critical role. "But sir," Dr. Harrison protested, his voice hesitant, "she hasn't been vetted for clearance yet." "I just vetted her," Grayson responded coolly, his tone unyielding as he buttoned his jacket over the coffee stain, his gaze never leaving Isabel. "My office. 15 minutes. It wasn't a request, it was a command." Isabel barely had time to process what had just happened before she found herself standing before the imposing mahogany door of Grayson's office. The room was exactly as she had imagined, sleek, minimalist, and coldly impersonal, a reflection of its owner. She knocked gently, the sound echoing in the stillness. "Enter." Grayson stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city, a fresh suit replacing the ruined one. His posture was perfect, commanding, as though he was always in control, always watching. "Do you know why you're here, Miss Ford?" His voice quiet, but with an edge of authority. Isabel swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "Because I spilled coffee on you, and you're either firing me personally or assigning me to janitorial duty." A small flicker of something, was it a smile, passed across his lips before it disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculated look she had come to expect. Honesty. Refreshing. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. You're here because I read your dissertation on cellular regeneration. Your approach to enzyme manipulation and tissue regeneration is exactly what the Aurora Project needs." She blinked, stunned by his words. Isabel had spent years working on her research, and now it seemed it had brought her to a place where her skills could actually change the world. But Grayson wasn't finished. He slid a thick folder across the desk to her, his expression unreadable. "Before you open that," he continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "understand something. Working directly with me comes with rules." Isabel hesitated, looking at the folder, then back at him. Grayson leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Rules that will protect us both." And just like that, Isabel realized that her life was about to change. No longer would she just be a scientist working for a corporation. She would be stepping into a world where every decision, every action, every word would be scrutinized under Grayson Montgomery's unblinking eye. A world where she would have to decide if she could follow his rules or if she was willing to break them. Isabel's second week at Montgomery Industries was a blur of scientific data, late nights in the lab, and the ever-present weight of Grayson Montgomery's intense scrutiny. She had been assigned to the Aurora Project, the company's most confidential and ambitious initiative, and her role was pivotal. Yet, as the days passed, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to this project than she had been told. Grayson's cold demeanor and his unyielding rules only added to the sense of mystery surrounding both him and the project itself. Grayson had made it clear from the start that Aurora was his obsession, something that had become intertwined with his identity. But Isabel, always the scientist, could sense something deeper. There was a darkness under the surface, something Grayson wasn't ready to confront, but which she was determined to uncover. The first signs of trouble came on the 5th day of her second week, when Isabel discovered a discrepancy in the data. The enzyme degradation rates weren't matching the projections. She didn't want to admit it, but she suspected something was being overlooked, perhaps even deliberately. Her instinct told her that the project wasn't just about curing diseases, but there was something about it that didn't add up. Late one night, as she pored over the test results on her laptop, a soft click from the lab door broke her concentration. She looked up to see Grayson standing in the doorway, his sharp silhouette framed by the dim light of the hallway. His presence seemed to fill the entire room, his imposing figure casting a shadow over the sterile space. "You're still here," Grayson said, his voice a low murmur. It wasn't a question, it was an observation. Isabel sat up straighter, pushing her chair back slightly. "I think I found something wrong with the enzyme degradation rates," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She wasn't sure why she felt the need to explain herself, but there was a sense of urgency in her chest. "We're not getting the results we should be." Grayson moved closer, his sharp gaze flicking over the screen in front of her, noting the data. Isabel could feel the tension between them, the distance he always kept, but also the underlying connection she couldn't deny. His steel-gray eyes studied her calculations, his jaw set with concentration. She couldn't read him, and it was maddening. "You've adjusted the cellular binding protocol," Grayson remarked, his voice quiet but full of approval. Isabel nodded. "Yes, the original framework wasn't accounting for the antioxidant interference. I think recalibrating the delivery mechanism could improve the rates." She clicked a few keys on her laptop, bringing up the updated model. "Look at this simulation." Grayson leaned closer, his shoulder brushing against hers as he peered at the screen. Isabel couldn't ignore the electricity that shot through her at the unexpected proximity. Her breath hitched slightly, but she didn't move. She refused to break her focus. "There's a noticeable improvement," Grayson said after a moment, his voice softer than usual. "I see what you did. We'll need to test it overnight." Before she could respond, their hands brushed as he reached for the keyboard. Isabel's heart skipped a beat, and Grayson quickly withdrew his hand as if burned. A tense silence settled over them. "Rule 1, Miss Ford," he said, his tone sharp. "Professional distance." She didn't back down. "You invaded my space first," she replied, the words coming out before she could stop them. It was reckless, but she couldn't help herself. It was as if her very being wanted to challenge him, to break through the walls he had built around himself. Their eyes locked in the reflection of the computer screen. There was something charged in the air, something neither of them acknowledged. It was like a moment suspended in time, an undeniable pull between them. Isabel could feel her pulse quicken, but Grayson cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Run the simulation overnight," he said, his voice once again cold and controlled. "I want results by morning." Isabel nodded, trying to push away the disorienting feeling that had settled in her chest. She was here to work, not to get distracted by her emotions, but she couldn't shake the fact that Grayson Montgomery had an effect on her unlike anyone else. As Grayson turned to leave, he paused, glancing back at her. "Your coffee," he said, his voice oddly quiet. "Black with 1 sugar, every day, the same." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "Is that another rule?" she asked, unable to hide the challenge in her tone. "No," Grayson said, his lips curling ever so slightly at the corners. "It's a habit. There's a difference." He turned and left without another word, leaving Isabel staring after him, her mind racing. Grayson Montgomery was full of contradictions. He was ruthless, cold, and unapproachable. Yet there were moments, rare moments, where she glimpsed something softer underneath the surface. And the longer she worked with him, the more she began to realize that there was something deeply personal at stake in this project. Something Grayson wasn't ready to confront, but which she was determined to uncover. Later that night, as she sat alone in her apartment, Isabel couldn't help but wonder, what was Grayson really trying to achieve with Aurora? Was it truly about medical progress, or was there something more to it, something darker? She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. She couldn't let the mystery go. Not now. Not when she was this close to the truth. The days at Montgomery Industries blurred together for Isabel. Every morning, she arrived early to review the latest data, every evening leaving the lab long after most of the staff had gone home. The Aurora project consumed her every waking thought, and the more she worked on it, the more she realized there was something deeply flawed about the way it was being conducted. The breakthrough she'd made with the enzyme degradation rates had accelerated their timeline, but there were still unexplained discrepancies in the trial results. The deeper she dug into the data, the more it seemed that Grayson Montgomery was hiding something from her, something crucial about the project's true purpose. She had always known Grayson to be intense, focused, and completely committed to Aurora, but there was a layer of secrecy, a guardedness that made her suspicious. It wasn't just about the science, it was personal, and she was beginning to wonder if the real truth was buried far deeper than anyone could imagine. One evening, she stayed in the lab long after hours, the flickering blue glow of the computer screens casting long shadows across the room. As she sifted through another batch of test results, her phone buzzed. It was an email from Dr. Harrison, her supervisor on the project, but the subject line made her blood run cold. Project Genesis, Secure Server Access. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. Genesis, the name Grayson had mentioned only in passing when they first discussed the project. The deeper implications of that word began to dawn on her. She had been assigned to Aurora, but Genesis was a more secretive phase of the project, one that wasn't publicly known. And now, she was getting an email about it. Isabel opened the email, her eyes scanning the words quickly. The contents were encrypted, with a password that only Grayson or Dr. Harrison could provide. Her heart raced. She knew she couldn't access it without permission, but a sense of urgency filled her. The data had been pointing toward something significant, something that could expose the truth. Before she could consider her next move, the lab door creaked open. "Still here, Miss Ford?" Grayson's voice cut through the quiet, and Isabel turned, startled to see him standing there, as if he had appeared out of nowhere. His eyes locked on the computer screen, narrowing as he took in the situation. I was just reviewing the latest data." Isabel stammered, feeling exposed. Grayson stepped closer, his gaze intense. "What's this about Genesis?" Isabel's pulse quickened. She couldn't tell him she had cracked part of the encryption, couldn't admit that she was digging into a project she wasn't cleared for. Instead, she chose her words carefully. "Just trying to understand the bigger picture," she said, feigning ignorance. Grayson didn't respond immediately, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than was comfortable. Isabel couldn't read his expression, his face was an impenetrable mask. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but firm. "You've been working too late, Miss Ford. It's one of the rules here, professional distance," he said, his words sharp. "That's why I'm here, to remind you." He was inches from her now, his presence commanding and impossible to ignore. Isabel swallowed hard, her fingers twitching as they hovered over the keyboard. There was an undeniable tension between them, something electric that neither of them acknowledged but both of them felt. She couldn't explain it, but it was there, something deep beneath the surface. Grayson's eyes flicked to the screen again, and Isabel could feel the weight of his scrutiny. For a moment she wondered if he knew she had been digging into the confidential files, but he said nothing about them. Instead, he let out a breath, his posture softening just a fraction. "I understand you're eager to make an impact, Isabel," Grayson said, his voice lower now, almost softer. "But remember, this project is bigger than both of us. The pressure, it's immense. You don't want to get in over your head." She stared at him, the weight of his words settling over her like a shroud. Bigger than both of us. What did he really mean by that? And why did it feel like he was warning her, like he was trying to protect her from something darker? Before she could respond, Grayson turned on his heel and walked back toward the door. "We'll talk more tomorrow. Don't stay here too long. The work can wait." Isabel remained frozen in place, the tension in the room lingering long after he had left. The words Genesis echoed in her mind, and she knew that whatever Grayson was involved in, it was far more dangerous than anything she had expected. She had already crossed a line by uncovering pieces of the project's hidden agenda, but now it felt like she had no choice. The deeper she dug, the more she understood. Whatever Grayson was hiding, it was tied to the tragic death of his twin brother, Nathaniel, and to the very foundation of Montgomery Industries. And if she didn't uncover the truth soon, she might find herself trapped in a world where the stakes were far higher than she could have ever imagined. The question was, would she be able to handle the truth once it came to light? The tension between Isabel and Grayson had reached its breaking point, and the stakes had never been higher. Isabel couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled deeper into a web of secrets, and with every new discovery she made, the more dangerous it all seemed. The moment she had uncovered the hidden files from the Aurora project, she knew things were spiraling out of control. She had found evidence that contradicted everything Grayson had told her, and now she was caught between loyalty to the man she was beginning to trust and the undeniable truth that his family's empire was built on lies. That night, as snow began to fall heavily over Boston, Isabel stayed late in the lab, the glow of her computer screen her only company. She had been analyzing the files she'd decrypted, piecing together a puzzle that she hadn't fully understood until now. The Aurora project, as it turned out, wasn't about just curing diseases. It was about creating a highly expensive, exclusive treatment that only the wealthy could afford. This wasn't Nathaniel's vision at all. Nathaniel had dreamt of accessible, affordable treatments for the masses. But somehow, his brother's legacy had been twisted into something grotesque, something that only benefited the elite. And Isabel was right in the middle of it all. Grayson hadn't told her about the project's true direction. She knew now that he was trying to protect her, but there was only so much he could shield her from. The project was more than just a career opportunity. It was a battle between ideals, and in the end, it could cost them everything. Her thoughts were interrupted when the lab door creaked open, and Grayson stepped inside, his eyes immediately locking onto hers. Isabel stood, the weight of the situation heavy between them. There was no pretending anymore. There were no more polite conversations or professional barriers. They were standing at the edge of something much bigger than either of them could handle alone. "You're still here," Grayson's voice was low, his usual control slipping just slightly. The quiet, controlled version of Grayson she had come to know was now replaced by something else. Something raw and vulnerable, as if he, too, was struggling with what they had both uncovered. "I had to finish something," Isabel replied, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. She couldn't afford to show weakness now, not when everything she believed in was unraveling. Grayson's eyes flicked to the computer screen, where the files she had been reviewing were still open. He didn't need to ask what she had found. Isabel had known, deep down, that he would eventually confront her. What she didn't know was how much he already knew. "I didn't want you to find out this way," Grayson said, his voice quieter now, almost a whisper, as if he were speaking to himself as much as to her. "You're right. I've been keeping things from you. But Isabel, the truth is more complicated than you think. If I had told you everything from the start, you wouldn't have joined this project. You wouldn't have agreed to work with me." Isabel's heart pounded in her chest. The words she had feared hearing finally echoed in her mind. Grayson wasn't the person she thought he was. She had known there was more to this than he had let on, but hearing him admit it outright made it all too real. She swallowed hard, her eyes never leaving his. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly, betraying the storm inside. "Why did you bring me here, if it was all a lie?" Grayson stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Because I needed someone who could see the truth for what it was," he said. "I thought you could handle it, but I was wrong. I thought I could control everything, my emotions, the project, the legacy, but I can't anymore. Not with you involved. Not with what's at stake." Isabel's eyes widened. "What's at stake?" she repeated, almost incredulous. She had suspected that there was a hidden agenda behind the Aurora project, but this was something else entirely. Grayson was speaking like someone who had already given up on everything. "You can't be serious. The entire project has been built on lies. The truth will come out, Grayson. You can't just keep hiding it." Grayson's jaw tightened. "I'm not hiding anymore," he said. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't want you to be part of this war. I didn't want you to lose everything, your career, your integrity, because of me." Isabel stepped back, shaking her head. "It's not just about me, Grayson. It's about all of us. You can't protect anyone by keeping them in the dark. If you want to fix this, you have to face it head on." For the first time, Grayson looked lost. "I don't know if I can," he admitted quietly. "Then we'll do it together," Isabel replied firmly, her resolve hardening. "I'm not running from this. I'm here, Grayson. But I won't be a part of this project if we don't make it right." The silence between them was thick with unspoken understanding. Grayson nodded, though his eyes were filled with regret. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible, "for everything." Isabel could feel the weight of his apology, but she didn't soften. She couldn't afford to. There was still too much to do, too much to uncover. And now, more than ever, they were in this together. "Let's fix this," Isabel said, her voice steady with determination. "We don't have time to waste." Grayson met her gaze, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe in something other than his own control. With a small nod, he turned to face the future they were about to confront together. It wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about redemption, for both of them. The days after Isabel and Grayson had made their final stand against the truths they had uncovered were a whirlwind. The Aurora Project was no longer just a scientific endeavor. It had become a battle for justice, for redemption, and for the lives of those who had been hurt by the web of lies spun by Grayson's father, Victor Montgomery. The weight of the decision to go public with the truth hung heavily over both of them. But neither Isabel nor Grayson could turn back now. The secrets that had been buried for years had risen to the surface, and there was no escaping the consequences. As the news of the Aurora Project's true purpose spread, the public outcry was swift and unforgiving. Grayson's father, once untouchable, was under investigation for his role in the corporate manipulation of healthcare, using Nathaniel's vision as a tool for profit while the world suffered. The depth of the betrayal was staggering, and the corruption that had tainted the project's original goal, to make medicine accessible, was now laid bare for everyone to see. The truth had finally come to light. and with it, the promise of change. Grayson, though still reeling from the enormity of what had been exposed, found himself at the center of a storm that he could no longer control. The board of Montgomery Industries, once loyal to his father, now turned their eyes to Grayson. The company's future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Grayson was no longer the cold, calculated CEO who had once manipulated everything to maintain order. He was a man driven by a new sense of purpose, a sense that, perhaps, this was the legacy he could build, one not rooted in power, but in healing. The fight for Aurora had taken on a new meaning, and now, more than ever, it was up to him to correct the wrongs his father had created. Isabel, though, wasn't so sure about what the future held. She had always known that joining Aurora would be a challenge, but now, standing on the precipice of everything she had worked for, she found herself questioning the cost. The line between personal and professional had blurred, and as much as she had come to respect Grayson, she couldn't ignore the fact that everything she had believed in had been tested. She couldn't just walk away from the people they had hurt, people whose lives had been ruined because of the lies Victor Montgomery had told for decades. The company's fate and her own were now intertwined in a way that neither of them could have anticipated. The decision to move the project to a new research facility, one that would truly honor Nathaniel's original vision, wasn't just a professional one. It was a deeply personal one for both of them. It was Grayson's attempt at redemption, at trying to erase the stain of his family's legacy and rebuild it into something worth believing in. Isabel, having seen the depth of his commitment, knew that this was the man she had been working with all along. The coldness, the walls he had built around himself, they were the result of years of pain, of grief. But now, he was fighting for something real, something that could change the world for the better. Yet, it wasn't just the project that had changed. Their relationship, too, had evolved into something neither of them had expected. What had started as professional respect had transformed into something more, something that neither of them could deny. After the last confrontation with Victor, after the truth was revealed, Isabel had found herself standing side by side with Grayson, in a way she had never imagined. In the midst of everything, in the wake of the chaos, their connection had grown stronger, more complex. They had been through so much together, and in the quiet moments when they were alone in the lab or walking through the halls of the new facility, Isabel could feel the shift. Grayson had changed, and so had she. They had both broken free from the chains of their pasts, and together they were building something new. Something that could heal not just their wounds, but the wounds of a broken system. 3 months later, the Nathaniel Reed Institute for Accessible Medicine had been established, and the Aurora Project had begun its next phase, distributing affordable treatments to patients around the world. The project was thriving, a symbol of everything that Nathaniel had dreamed of, a legacy of compassion, healing, and accessibility. Isabel stood at the forefront of this new chapter, now leading the research with Grayson by her side. The work they had done, the risks they had taken, were beginning to pay off in ways they had never imagined. But it wasn't just the project that had succeeded, it was their relationship as well. Grayson had come to understand that real change, both in business and in life, couldn't be built on rules and control. It had to be built on trust, on understanding, and on love. Isabel had taught him that, and together they had created something far more powerful than either of them could have achieved alone. Standing at the window of their new office, overlooking the vast expanse of the Green Mountains in Vermont, Isabel felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She turned to Grayson, who was standing beside her, looking out over the landscape. "Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice?" she asked softly. Grayson looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and contentment. "I don't wonder," he said. "I know we did." As the sun dipped below the mountains, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Isabel realized that this was only the beginning. Together, they had rewritten the rules that once defined their lives but now would no longer control them. And for the first time in a long while, Isabel allowed herself to believe in the future. A future where healing, truth, and love would always be the guiding principles. Lesson learned in a world where power, control, and secrets often define success. Legacy of Secrets reminds us that true progress comes not from manipulation, but from transparency, trust, and the courage to challenge the status quo. Grayson Montgomery's journey from a rigid, rule-bound CEO to a man driven by compassion and the desire to honor his late brother's vision teaches us that redemption is possible, no matter how deep the mistakes or how strong the walls we've built around ourselves. Isabel Ford's unwavering dedication to truth and justice shows us the power of standing up for what's right, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us. Their story is a powerful reminder that healing is possible, both on a personal level and within a broken system. Love, trust, and a willingness to break free from the past are the keys to transformation. Whether in business or life, we must remember that the real legacy we leave is not built on wealth or power, but on the positive impact we have on others and the courage we show to make things right. Now, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? What did you think of the story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories and valuable life lessons. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. We appreciate your support, and we can't wait to bring you more.